We'll go straight to Mitch Harper. He covers BYU. Mitch, thanks for your time. We opened up the show today with, of course, the great story about a five-star quarterback committing to BYU. What has that meant to, and it's going to be down the road, but the fact they got him in the commitment, what does that mean to BYU faithful?
It's a big deal, Smoke. And I think it's a commitment that, it's a little bit of an old school recruiting a pitch where BYU recruited Ryder Lyons since he was an 8th grader. And this was a long multi-year process to land Ryder Lyons. And now BYU has its quarterback of the future that they're going to really build this program around. And they believe it could be the type of prospect that, can have a domino effect to where future LDS prospects or maybe prospects in the region look at BYU in a different light and say, why not go to BYU? Because in the past, when they were an independent, they weren't in the conversation for guys like Ryder Lyons.
That is interesting that you bring that up, because I was going to ask you about it. Because if you were not able to win a national title, even though you may want to go and follow a school of your faith, you may be like, well, it doesn't mean I'm not LDS. It just means I'm not going there. He's a magnet. Like every 5-star is a magnet recruiting wise, but this opens up a whole new door, doesn't it?
It does. And, he's like a new media prospect where he's got a massive TikTok following. He's got a huge Instagram following. I mean, he's got the aura, as the kids say, and he's going to bring an aura, to BYU's recruiting trail where prospects are going to want to line up with him. A guy like Tawi Akana, 3-star wide receiver from Orem High. He's had some recent offers from Alabama, Arkansas. He's going to be someone to monitor in this cycle. He played on Overtime Elite with Ryder Lyons, and they were on the same official visit this past weekend. BYU, has got a lot of momentum right now as an athletic department too. And, when I was at the Big 12 meetings in Orlando a few weeks back, I was talking with BYU's AD, Brian Santiago, and he's just recently got hired last month. And he just really looks at the Big 12 as a platform that springboarded BYU into the big time. Whereas maybe, other programs have looked at the Big 12 or just the national narrative around this league is like, oh, it's second rate. BYU has looked at it as a launching pad to reach heights that they never before have reached. And this is another example of that, because Ryder Lyons a few years ago doesn't consider BYU. And then you factor in the NIL piece that you got to be competitive there. BYU's got a track record of pumping out NFL quarterbacks with Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall. There's a lot of momentum, and they kind of had this perfect storm. And then the recent on-field success, they feel like they can take it to greater heights. And again, it's just another example of that by getting Ryder Lyons over Oregon and USC and really the who's who in college football.
Mitch, the money piece in the NIL gets brought up a lot nowadays, and people can get weirdly defensive about it. It's like, it is what it is, but that would come into play for any 5-star, but he does have a background with BYU as well, right? I mean, he's got some firmly entrenched roots there with the Cougars. So can you kind of speak to that, his father, and just sort of he's Mormon? I mean, there's a lot of pull outside of just the money when people look on the outside surface of this story.
Welcome, guys. You're at the 10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company tasting room here. So we're located in basically central Colorado in the Rocky Mountains. Our 2 flagship whiskeys are our rye whiskey and our bourbon. Our rye whiskey is our most awarded spirit. Our bourbon's our best seller. We're very proud of it. We think you're going to love it too. If you don't like it, send it back to us. We'll drink it for you.
10th Mountain Whiskey and Spirit Company, Colorado.
No question. And, his father was a walk-on defensive back on the BYU football team that went to the Cotton Bowl in 1996. And he's got sisters that have graduated from BYU, strong family ties. And he's a kid that's really grounded in his faith with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He plans to serve a mission before he enrolls at BYU. His older brother, Walker Lyons, was a top prospect that BYU pursued. He ended up going to USC in the 2023 cycle, but he served a mission. So it's a family that is faith-based, and, BYU, made that a focus. Kalani Sitake, he doesn't, when it comes to this recruitment, he's got his general manager, Dave George, who they hired last year. He's kind of the point person when it comes to the financials. Kalani focuses a lot on culture, and you guys have probably talked to him a lot, and you know that he talks about love and learning his culture, and he really pushes that when it comes to recruits. When he gets in there, gets these guys in his office and has that conversation to, kind of close the deal, but it's a big focus for that. So Ryder Lyons has been a guy that's been aware of BYU for a long time, and BYU has made him their number one prospect, the number one prospects for the 2026 cycle for years. And this has been a recruitment that for a long time, I think a lot of national, analysts kind of looked at BYU as just a afterthought, but he'd show up to these unofficial visits, see him on the sidelines, see him in all these games. And I don't think people nationally, some people did, but there wasn't many that realized that BYU was a real player here for Ryder Lyons. And of course, they get across the finish line and land him.
So Gatorade Player of the Year, 3,000 plus passing yards. He's a dual threat guy. What can you tell us about his game outside of those kind of general, descriptors?
Well, BYU loves having quarterbacks that can stretch the field. And, Kalani Sitake, he's got a background as a defensive coordinator, but he loves the offensive side. I mean, when he was the last time BYU signed a 5-star quarterback was in the 2002 cycle. And Kalani Sitake, oddly enough, was coaching the quarterbacks as an assistant analyst on that staff with Ben Olsen back in the day. Kalani loves, he wants BYU to have a high-powered offense. And Ryder Lyons fits that to a T. They love to stretch the field. BYU wants to have the big playmaking ability through the air, and Ryder Lyons throws an effortless ball. I think the most underrated aspect to him is that he is a big-time competitor. He's a goal-driven kid. He is highly competitive, and, he's going to have the weight of the world on his shoulders when he arrives at BYU to be the face of the program. I mean, BYU has a tendency to kind of celebritize its athletes. It's a big deal out here where BYU football is a massive draw. And I think people, that become big time players at BYU, they become celebrities. So he's going to have a lot of eyeballs on him, conducting himself as a leader. He's got kind of that quality to do that. That's what he's been known for at Folsom High School, and a real strong competitor as well. But his running ability is top shelf. I mean, over 1,200 yards in the past 2 seasons as a starter on the ground, and just highly productive. And he's around, one of the most talented California high school teams at Folsom in that state. So he's got great personnel around him, but he's elevated them, and he is the best player coming out of the state of California. And he feels like a perfect fit for BYU scheme with what Aaron Roderick has had success with, like Zach Wilson. He's so much like Zach, and he's farther ahead than Zach was as a high school prospect.
So because of that, do you expect him, and I remember talking to the Barrington brothers about the mission and how it affects you, at least fitness-wise. You can be working out all you want, but you're not anywhere near facilities that are like what you're going to be at in most cases. So because he's advanced now, does that mean he can maybe hit the ground running more after his mission in 2 years? Or, I mean, obviously they'll have a backup plan for that, but is that maybe better than most guys who would probably even still have to wait a year to get back in the rhythm of things?
Yeah, it's a good question, because a lot of it's predicated on the timing of when they arrive back from the mission. If they're a player that, say, arrives in spring or summer, most likely they're not going to have enough time to recover and get their body ready to play Power 4 football. So typically you see a lot of Latter-day Saint missionaries come back that they're going to be playing at BYU. Typically they come back in November, December. They enroll in the school in January, and then they've got a lot of time to get ready for an upcoming season. And that's the expectation would be when Ryder Lyons would matriculate into the program, would be in a January window. So he's got a full winter conditioning, all the phases in an off season to get ready for a given year. So that's, typically kind of the blueprint. There's not a specific roadmap for these return missionaries, because you're right. I mean, it can change guys physically. You bring up the Barrington brothers. I think Clark lost 70 pounds when he was on his mission, and he had to completely overhaul his body. It took a full year and a half to really get back to a level physically where he could be playing in the trenches on that offensive line for BYU. So it'll take time, and it always, there's a cliche term of missionary wall when it comes to guys that come back from a mission at some point in their recovery or getting back to what they used to be pre-mission. They just kind of, there's some ups and downs in the process, but BYU has a track record of working with those athletes, a higher volume than really any other program in the country. They embrace the missionary program. They want their athletes, if they want to serve a mission, they embrace that fully. It's part of the fabric of the school, and they believe, tied to the success of the school. So it should be a positive, but it is definitely an underrated aspect that it's difficult physically for guys to just assume they'll be back to their normal selves. It takes some time when they come back from the mission.
Mitch, there's obviously the 800-pound gorilla as far as the story about Jake Retzloff and what's happening there, which is right now it's just kind of quiet. How much does that seep into what everyone thinks when they look at BYU this year?
It has to play a huge role because, the quarterback position is so critical. And as we know from year one in the 16-team Big 12, you've got to have probably one of the top quarterbacks in the country to win this league. And, Aaron Roderick, BYU's offensive coordinator, at the end of last season, viewed Jake Retzloff being potentially a top 5 quarterback nationally from his viewpoint inside that building. So you don't have a backup right now if you're BYU that comes close to that level of trust, for the upcoming season. BYU can win games this year still because they're going to have a really good defense, but the quarterback spot, there is a drop-off if Jake Retzloff is for some reason unavailable as this continues to go on with the civil lawsuit of sexual assault that was filed back in May. So, yesterday there was a BYU football media day event for the local media out here, and, there was no new update. It's still kind of being viewed by BYU as the private matter. They referenced the initial statement that the school issued out back on May 21st, and it's still kind of up in the air. And it's interesting because 2 weeks from now, it's going to be Big 12 Media Day in Frisco. And, BYU's got, an intriguing team, but I think everyone, myself included, is going to want some clarity about what's going to be going on at that quarterback situation and what Jake's status is going to be. So it is a huge question. And, some of the top contenders for that spot are going to be McKay Hillstead, a former Utah State transfer who's got a full year in the program. And then Bear Bachmeyer, a Stanford transfer who joined the program in the spring portal window. He's on campus now. So those would be some of the top 2 guys, if Jake is unavailable, that I would look to, that BYU probably will be, getting a chance to contend for that starting job this fall.
So the Big 12 with Arizona State winning it all, BYU, of course, smoked Colorado. There were successes in the bowl during the bowl season, and there were some disappointments as well. Where is BYU on the meter of top tier, maybe next level, on teams that should be able to follow up what they were able to do last year, if not get better?
I think they're on that next level. Without Jake, if Jake Retzloff's unavailable, I think that recalibrates expectations for BYU. Jake wasn't a perfect quarterback by any stretch. I mean, they still won 11 games, despite sometimes Jake not being perfect. So they've shown that they can win without flawless QB play, but Jake, again, just has some playmaking ability, and his ability, 2-minute drill, he was excellent in those spots, and he really capitalized when getting short fields. So I think BYU's kind of in that next grouping. I think when that preseason poll comes out in a few weeks, I'd say BYU's maybe 5th or 6th, somewhere in there. But they've got the ceiling, unlike the first 2 years in the Big 12, where you feel like they could finish as a top 15 team going into a year. Whereas, last year was kind of unexpected. No one saw 11-2 coming for BYU. They shocked everyone. And whereas this year, the depth, how they attack the transfer portal, very selective, but a lot of those portal additions, including the ones in spring, are going to be looked upon to have an immediate impact. And you pair that up with a good core of returning lettermen from a year ago, it should be a really good football team. But again, you've got to clear up that quarterback position, because it just feels like everything is tethered to that spot, at least as far as how high can BYU get in this league, and can they get to Arlington coming up in December?
There we go. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate your time. We'll see you in Frisco.
I will be there.
All
I'll
right,
see
we'll
you guys
see you
there.
in Frisco. Come on by, say hi. We'll say hi to you if we see you. Mitch Harper from KSL covers BYU. What a day it was for BYU football. Think about that. They had the number one basketball recruit and one of the top players in the class of 2026